أشرف الخلق والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum, guests and all the people watching. My name is Shady Shebak, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion with our distinguished guests. Joining us today are a group of well-informed citizens, and we will be discussing racism, activism, advocacy, and listening to our guests for ways to be involved in the nationwide discussions taking place regarding race relationships and police brutality. This is extremely important, especially for immigrant communities who really, we owe it and we need to listen to those who have been in the struggle in this nation for a long time. Today, we are confronted with socio-political escalation that we have not witnessed since the 1960s or even during the World War II era in terms of mood of the nation, the destruction and rebuilding of the country's physical, psychological, and social infrastructure. This discussion will be wide-ranging, and it is my sincere hope that the communities will listen to the message from today's seminar. I want to first and foremost thank the Islamic House of Wisdom for providing their platform for tonight's very important discussion. Our guests are Imam Elahi, the Imam of the Islamic House of Wisdom in Dearborn Heights. Imam Elahi is a pillar of Islamic advocacy in Michigan and someone whom I admire deeply for his voice of reason, even during unreasonable times. We also have joining us Baqir Mohie, an incredible voice for Muslims in terms of public policy. Baqir is a dear friend of mine, and he currently serves as program director for MPAC, a national Muslim advocacy organization. And finally, we have with us Imam Dawud Walid, whom I personally consider a mentor and a friend, a role model, and a guide during difficult socio-political times. He is the executive director of CARE Michigan, and moreover, he's an author and lecturer. There's a few people that when they tell me something, I won't question. And that's, Brother Dawud Walid is one of those people, because I really, really trust his opinion and his deep thought into these matters of social, political, and activism. Brother Dawud always pushes people to critically assess ideas and thoughts, and is a tireless voice for Black Americans, Muslim Americans, and immigrant communities. Thank you all for joining us tonight. To begin, I would like to give each of our guests the opportunity to address this topic, the topic of tonight's seminar, in an open format, starting with Brother Dawud, then Imam Elahi, and then Baqir. And then we'll have some questions, and we'll field those questions to our wonderful guests. Brother Dawud, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا دائما أبدا. First of all, let me say to Sheikh Elahi that we thank him as being the spiritual leader, the Murshid of Dar al-Hikmah, for not only hosting this particular topic right now, but over the decades for so many topics as it relates to human rights, adala, all of these sorts of issues that are really at the core of the spiritual message of Islam. So we thank him, and may Allah preserve him and protect his family and protect all of those whom he loves. So I will try to be brief in my comments, and there's so much that could be said regarding this issue. But let me say to the audience that's watching this that with these two recent police murders that have gotten a lot more attention, I'm speaking of Breonna Taylor, the EMT worker who was innocently killed in Louisville, Kentucky, and then also another unarmed African-American who was killed, George Floyd. And there's been people who the police have killed since then who are Black people who are unarmed since then. That these issues that we've seen with our cameras and been shared on Facebook and WhatsApp, these aren't new. Just maybe the coverage is new, and the amount of street protests that we've seen, which actually is a very good sign, is something that's really unprecedented. But these things have gone on in America since before there was a United States of America in 1776. And I always say that America was established upon a dichotomy, or two faces, right? So on one face, we have the founding fathers who wrote some very beautiful documents. The Declaration of Independence has very beautiful words. The preamble to the Constitution is very beautiful. Even the Bill of Rights. If you were to look at the Bill of Rights, you would think that the founding fathers must have studied maqasid al-Sharia in the writings of Shatabi and talking about the 5 maqasid of the Sharia, because the Bill of Rights talking about the protection of life and freedom of religion and the protection of the freedom of thought, hizul aql, and protection of property and lineage, all of these things we find in the Islamic sacred law, right? So these people wrote some very nice things. At the same time, they also wrote into the Constitution that African people black people constituted 3/5 of human being, right? Relating to who was counted for electoral votes. People were treated like chattel, like animals, denied very basic human rights and dehumanized. People's names taken away, no freedom of religion for these people, children sold away from their fathers and mothers so that the SNE could be disconnected as far as the transmission of religion, transmission of language and culture. And we know about 30% of these people were Muslims who were enslaved. In fact, George Washington had at least 3 enslaved people from Muslim background. He had one called Fatima, which is Fatima, little Fatima, which is Fatima Sughra, and then one called Sambul, which is a very popular name from the Mandinka tribe. And Mandinka tribe, Kulluhum, is a completely Muslim tribe in West Africa, right? So we know the history of this country. And we know that after the abolishment of slavery, there began to be a new type of slavery and a different form of oppression, specifically targeting Black people. So the the overseers on plantations, the overseer became the officer. Overseer, officer. Understand what I'm saying? So we have a system that was set up in this very diabolical way. And we as Muslims, we need to look at this issue that's going on as really something that's satanic, and it's bigger than just a political issue. Like, the problems of America just can't be marched away or sued away. Marching's important, laws are important, but that's not going to fundamentally solve the underlying root issue. The underlying root issue relates to a tafsir or something that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam mentioned, and it relates to an ayah of Quran. And we know that Allah Azza wa Jal commanded the angels, those in their assembly, to make prostration to Adam alayhi salam, and all of them did except for Iblis. He refused. And Allah Azza wa Jal already knew the answer why, but he asked Iblis, why did he not bow down? And Iblis said, قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. He told Allah, he said, I'm better than him because you made me of fire, but you made him of the dirt. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said in regard to this about Iblis being the enemy of God, he said of Iblis's Imamu muta'assibin wa salafu mustakbirin, that he is the Imam of the tribalists, he's the Imam of the racists, and he's the Salaf, the predecessor of those who made themselves bigger than what they are, the arrogant ones. So we see that arrogance will cause one to reject the truth, and also arrogance will seek to inspire people to undermine people and to put people down. So when we're talking about this issue of systemic racism in America, where some people have benefited greatly, other people have been systemically put down, and there are some people who even have benefited by the racism, but themselves have also been affected by types of bigotry, that we see that this is really something that's satanic in nature. And I can't say this enough, right? And so when we talk about these issues about systemic police brutality against Black people, against how the issue of mass incarceration in the United States of America, how certain communities get overly policed and why others don't get policed, even though, let's say, white people and Black people use and sell drugs at the same percentage in the population. And there are many more white people in America than Black people, yet the prisons are full with people who are Black. And then many of them are even innocent of their crimes because they're not able to get proper legal representation, and they get court-appointed lawyers, which then tell them to take plea deals. When you look at the entire system, it's set up in a Iblisi type of way to privilege one group of people over another group of people, right? And then lastly, I will say this, is that we as Muslims, we have the solution to what solves America. I mean, we have the solution to what ails America. And we have this in the Quran and in the spiritual teachings of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his spiritual inheritors. So we have the answers to these spiritual diseases in the broad sense, to some of these social issues. We have the answers. I think the real question for us is, one, are we ourselves living by these teachings in our own families and in our own communities, number one? And we have to be honest about that. And then number two, are we courageous enough to take the teachings of Islam in their real sense and take them to the broader public? And what I mean by this is, I believe that many Muslims have been so concerned after 9/11 about getting accepted by the dominant culture, we have neglected to call people to what we believe in for them to accept what we have. We're seeking their acceptance instead of calling them to accept what we believe in a different worldview about how we can make America live up to what she should be. And I believe that the only thing that can solve the race issue in America, the only thing that can undo the false ideology of white supremacy in America, is the Quran and the teachings of our holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I believe I don't believe anything else will work. The politicians haven't been able to fix the problem. The judges haven't been able to fix the problem. The entertainers haven't been able to fix the problem. The same thing that's going on today was going on back in 1970 and in 1950. These things have continued. They haven't really decreased that much. What is the solution to this problem? The solution to this problem is what we have. It's our spiritual teachings. It's the teachings of Ahlul-Bayt. It's what we as Muslims show when we're at Hajj, on Jabal Arafat. We have all of these things. But first, we have to try to do a better job of living them. And then we take this, invite the American public and show them, what does Islam have to say about all of these issues? And I believe right now, in this time of basically, there's a revolutionary spirit in America right now. We're seeing something that we haven't seen before. Never have we seen in American history where white people equal the amount of Black people, even more white people protesting against discrimination against Black people in some of these marches. This is like subhanAllah, this is like a qiyam, like a thawra, like an intifada, so to speak, almost, in a soft type way. This is something new. So we Muslims, we're in a good position to engage the interfaith community, engage the broader public, tell them what Islam has to say about these things. And I think that many people would appreciate the insights from our scholars like Sheikh Elahi and so many of our other scholars, I think they really would appreciate this right now, as well as not just the scholar, for us who are living this message, to take this out and to live this message in the broader society. I think this would help a lot, my brothers and sisters in Islam. I'm very confident, I'm very hopeful. I'm not pessimistic, I'm actually very optimistic that with Allah's His nusrah, with His help, that we can help change this and make this better. وَإِنْ يَصُمْكُمُ اللَّهُ فَلَا غَالِبَ لَكُمْ. Right now, Allah says that, you know, if Allah aids us, then really no one can defeat us in our noble and our righteous causes. So this is what I have to say, and I will stop my comments from now. Thank you. Afwan minkum.
Thank you so much, Maulana. I want to pass it on to Imam Elahi and then Baqir, and then we have some questions that we want to address, specific questions. Maulana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother Shady. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulih al-Kareem wa ala alihi al-tayyibin al-tahirin wa sahbihi al-muntajabin. I want to thank Brother Dawud, Imam Dawud, for his generous words in the beginning of his statement, encouraging. We honor the role of Imam Dawud in not only care but the council of the Imams and community in general. That anytime there is need for guidance, for support, for inspiration, for light, for leadership, Brother Dawud is available, and we appreciate that. I think the points that Dawud mentioned are all the subjects of today. I think he addressed almost every angle of the situation, this testing time that we are going through. Started with the pandemic of coronavirus, and then the police brutality, and then the protest on the streets. And he mentioned about arrogance as a cause of racism and the complication that we are going through. And it's amazing, the hadith from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال ذرة من كبر, that there is no room in paradise for anyone who has a spark of arrogance in his heart, in her heart. And then he mentioned about the first racist was Shaitan. Shaitan was the first one whose rebellion against God was demonstrated through his racist statement. And it's interesting that after he said that I'm better than Adam, and my race is higher than Adam race, خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين, right away Allah told him that اخرج منها فإنك رجيم. After saying that a racist remark, then there is no place in paradise for you. Get out of here. So this is interesting. I agree with Brother Dawud also in a sense of, there have been so many times in the last few hundred years of protests, and especially African American, and many times that it got to bloodshed, and people were killed, people were arrested, people got wounded many times. But something different this time, and I myself, I use the word, is a new American revolution against racism. Yesterday that I was in Detroit, part of the march, that governor was there, mayor was there, and many members of clergy community were there, that yes, it is kind of resurrection and revolution against racism. And the difference of this time and previous times is that the tools and technology, this social media is very helpful in all this video and all this information. We didn't have this in the past. Like, look at the number of videos just in last week, last 10 days of showing the brutality and violence by police in many areas. Even in Buffalo, that today the entire team of police resigned in Buffalo because they were embarrassed about pushing that guy. He was 75 years old and old man, and he went there like showing kindness and peacefulness, but the way they push him back and he fell down and he is in the hospital now, and then they resigned like they are protesting that what they did was right. Even the governor of New York condemned and said, this is absolutely inhumane and you cannot defend that. But I'm saying that even myself used to say there are bad apples everywhere. I mean, you have it in every community, you have it even among the religious leaders. But really, even myself, I'm more convinced that it is more than just bad apples. Looks like there is a need for Islah reform. There is a need for correction. So, and we as Muslims, absolutely right. Islam is the most anti-racism religion in the world. But that doesn't mean that we as Muslims really applying it properly. Look at the position of Prophet, peace be upon him, against racism. The story of Bilal, that he was black, he was a slave in the beginning, his even accent was wrong, and he couldn't even say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And people say, Ya Rasulullah, he already a slave and he was poor and he is black and originally Habashi, Ethiopia, though he was born in Mecca. But why is it that at least choose somebody else to say the adhan? And the Prophet said, Sinu balalin shinun indallah. Allah doesn't care about his accent. He cares about his heart and about his soul. Or the story of racism about Abu Dhar radiallahu anh, when he had like a conversation with Saint Bilal, and as brothers and friends, but still Abu Dhar got upset and he used the expression of Yabna Sauda, that your mom was black, and Bilal's heart broken and he cried and he reported to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Abu Dhar got nervous and he jumped and rushed to Rasulullah and asked him for forgiveness. And the Prophet said, looks like it's still some trait of Jahiliyyah in you, and you should ask for forgiveness. So Abu Dhar, he left and looking around to find Bilal, and when he found him, he lay down on the ground and put his face on the floor. And he said, Bilal, please, I want forgiveness, but I want to feel the forgiveness. The only way I can feel the forgiveness, if you come and put your foot on my face. And he was crying and asking for that. And Bilal said that, Abu Dhar, how can I do such a thing? A face that did do the sujood and prostration to our Lord, I cannot do such a thing. He came and he kissed the face of Abu Dhar and he forgave him. I'm saying that there are so many stories, and now the ahadith, the ayat in Quran, in akramakum indallah, the story of Salman minna Ahlul Bayt. So yeah, Islam is very anti-racism, But this is something that we as Muslim community also must show that we are how much anti-racism, and especially now that the question of Black Lives Matter and this movement for justice, movement for correction, movement for Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. These are our really obligation. The Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil-qist. This is like an order that is standing for justice is not an option, but it is an order from God for the people of faith. Like Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. Brother Bilal mentioned something from Imam Ali, but also Imam Ali is saying that a group of people tarikun li'inkar al-munkar باللسانه وقلبه ويده فذلك ميت الأحياء. If you see corruption, if you see something wrong, whether it's injustice or racism or whatever, and you are silent, you are participating in that crime, in that corruption, and if you did not protest, if you don't protest with your action, with your expression, or at least with your heart and intention, then ذلك ميت الأحياء. This person is not high anymore. It's a ميت الأحياء, is a dead body in the community. So if the Quran says, if you want to be muflihin, then do al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. Promote what is good and prevent what is wrong. And kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrajat lin-nas ta'muruna bil-ma'ruf wa tanhawna 'anil munkar wa tu'minun. You are the best nation. Why you are the best nation is not because you speak Arabic or your color or you live in certain territory. No, the only way that you deserve to be the best nation with this condition, that you promote what is good and prevent what is wrong, and you keep your faith in God. So I think I'm like Brother Dawud, I'm very optimistic about this situation. And especially now that we see that, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at the news, even the First Lady now, she came to the scene to talk about this issue. When you have 4 former presidents, you have Obama, Clinton, Jimmy Carter, Bush, 4 of them, they issued a statement and stood against this injustice against whether George Floyd and other like Ahmad Arbery and the other, the lady that Dawud mentioned. When you see, and you see even the generals from the American Army and Defense Minister, when you see these people, they are coming to the scene. When you see the governor of Michigan, she walked with us yesterday 3-4 miles under 90 degrees. Now the question is that how can we take advantage of this and this moment, this important time that religious leader, Christian leader, some Jewish leader, political leaders, everybody is talking about, yes, we need change. Yes, we need reform. Yes, we need to sanitize the, the culture of racism and fix the culture of police department. I think now the question is that how can we keep this and how we can go on, not just 1 week, after 1 week, everything forgotten, and then another time and another crime and another demonstration, like demonstration is the past as usual. We need to continue this conversation, and somehow the leaders that they are issuing a statement, keep in touch with them and continue this dialogue.
Thank you, Maulana, for those words of wisdom. I'd like to pass it on to Baqir, and also keep in mind, I do have a list of very important questions that I'd like to get addressed as well. So Baqir, please take the floor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. First and foremost, let me pray for everybody that they're staying safe right now during this Corona and all of the chaos that's going on around the world. And I want to thank Imam Muhammad Ali Elahi for always holding these discussions and being a friendly face in our community. It's open to interfaith and interfaith, and always a welcoming face to whoever wants to come over to his center. And to also thank Imam Dawud Walid for always coming and showing up in Dearborn and talking to us about these issues and educating us and giving us his wisdom. So regarding the current crisis that we're going with, in the Prophet's last sermon, he spoke about لا فرق بين عربي وعجمي إلا بالتقوى. There is no difference between an Arab and a non-Arab other than by piety. And we've heard this over and over and over again from various Imams and Islamic school, but do we really practice it at home? We are sitting at the sidelines right now as Muslim Americans, as Arab Americans, watching the protests going on. Some of us are taking part, others are active on social media. But how different are we as a community? Have we embraced Black Lives Matter in our communities, in our Arab American communities? As the hadith goes, in Arabic, it's, excuse me if it's wrong, لا غير قوم لا غير الله قوم إلا ما غير نفسه.
إنما لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Yes.
So a nation will not change themselves unless they change themselves first, unless they work on themselves first, right? We are in Metro Detroit. We are neighbors to one of the strongest and most prominent African American cities in the United States. How friendly are we with the community there? Do we meet with them? Do we see them? Have we been to the Black Masajid in the centers? Have we been to the Muslim Center on Davison? Have we met with the Ghanaians and the Senegals around Redford? Have we engaged with them? Have we spoken to them? I don't feel that we have done our part as Arab Americans, Metro Detroit, to meet with the African American communities and our neighbors. We certainly will not marry our sons and daughters out to them. If we see someone walking across our neighborhood, we might cross the street. All of these disturbing acts that we do, that's not really Black Lives Matter. It's not the aura that we're trying to reach right now with the movement that's going on in this nation, right? How many of us, our rizq, our sustenance is dependent on the African American community, whether it's by gas stations or convenience stores or grocery stores or whatever service that we might be offering, but we don't respect the community. We don't respect those that are feeding our family, that help build our houses and build our masajid. How many of us are selling products at these gas stations that we would not want sold to our kids, whether it might be paraphernalia or whether it might be alcohol or whatnot? I don't believe that it's a coincidence that the biggest Arab American community in the United States concentration is right next to African Americans. They welcomed us. They allowed us to set up our base and to plant our roots for our future generations. And we speak as the first Muslims of the United States, but that's far from the reality. Islam came to the United States on the slave ships. I've read that as much as 20 or 30% of the population that came from Africa were Muslims. If you visit the Muslim American Museum in Washington, D.C., you'll see signs of graves when these slave populations used to do their burials with the crescent or with Allah written or Allah Wahid written on it, or the sign of one God like this on these gravestones, way before we came over here, right? So I believe that we need to work on ourselves. We need to work on our community. We need to keep each other in check. We need to speak to each other first and foremost, before we worry about everything else that's occurring. And through that, we will be contributing towards allowing Black lives to really matter in the United States. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Baqir. I'm going to field a few questions. Please try to keep your responses within a few minutes. And if you feel uncomfortable answering any of these, please let me know. And Sister Jennifer is also going to see if there's any questions on Facebook coming from the live audience. Brother Dawud, I want to point this question towards you because you and I have discussed this before. And I just wanted to see if we can get a message across to the community. Well, how do we decipher between advocism and advocacy and what I've seen you describe as, you know, this woke activism? And how do we promote and participate in sacred activism rather than, you know, the what you had called and what I've also started assuming that the woke activism?
Okay. So as Sheikh Elahi mentioned, Hafidhullah, that part of the foundation of our deen is al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. And this is really the foundation of what we would call activism. Now, we need to ask ourselves, what is ma'ruf and what is munkar? And I think the difference of this coming from an Islamic perspective, from a secular perspective, is the epistemology that we start from, of how we process knowledge. Like, how do we judge what is ma'ruf and what is munkar? And I think that is the difference. And then also, not just in substance, but also in form, because like everything in Islam, we have adab. So there's adab in al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. So for instance, the great Persian Mu'tazili scholar, Ragab al-Asbahani, he mentions this in his book, Mufradat al-Fadl Quran. When he talks about the meaning of the word mahruf, he says that essentially, and we know mahruf has more meaning than this, but essentially he said it is al-adl wa tayyib. This is what we're supposed to enjoin, that which is just and also that which is wholesome. But now, according to Islamic sacred law, something that is just, the first definition of it, it means that when something functions in its proper place that Allah intended it to be in, then that's just. So this is not firstly a secular consideration. This is a divine consideration, right? And then munkar is the opposite of mahruf. So al-dhulm, to us, the first way we would look at that is when people take things outside of their proper places that Allah intended them to be in and function in. Not democracy. Democracy is not the first judgment of what is mahruf and what is munkar. And then that also which is unwholesome, that which is al-fuhsh, which goes against that which is tayyib, which is opposite of that. And then of course, the mahruf is also understood by the urf, or the custom of the regional considerations of where people live at, which is a third consideration, though custom cannot override that which Allah Azza wa Jal and His Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have defined as being munkar, that which is haram, that which Allah's la'na is upon. You can't then go and say that's mahruf, that's good, that's what we should be advocating for. So I think that's the difference. And we as Muslims, we need to return back to our tradition, and we just can't simply go by hashtags. We have a criterion of judging haq from batil. So the first place we go to is the Quran. And in some secular movements or secular issues, maybe some of that, or maybe the majority of it, may jibe. It may coincide with the Quran. It may coincide with the teachings of our beloved Prophet, but some of it may not. So we have to be able to distinguish the difference, and this is how we cooperate with each other as Muslims. And there's a mabda in this, or a principle of how we cooperate with people who aren't Muslims, because Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَتَعَوْنَ عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوْنَ عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Right? So we cooperate based upon righteousness and piety, but we don't cooperate or advance that which is sinful, and that which disrespects the remembrance of God, then we don't cooperate with people with that, no matter how woke they claim they are. And that's so we need to make the distinction as Muslims between the two. So we have sacred activism, and that is guided by the beautiful teachings of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt. That's where the sacredness comes from. And then anything that goes against that, then that's not what we should be promoting, because then that would be el-amru bil munkar, and we are prohibited to do el-amru bil munkar. And as a matter of fact, Allah mentions this, that el-amru bil munkar is actually the sign of the munafiqeen. This is what hypocrites, they enjoin that which is hateful in the sight of Allah. They do that.
I couldn't. I think that's well said. We have to be nuanced, and I think that's why it's so important to have the proverbial elders. I'm not calling anybody old. I got more gray hairs than anybody here, but the proverbial elders. I think it's so important that that activism are also reaching out to elders. The first person I reached out to was you, brother, and I was very sincere in that, because I think we have to reach out to the people who have been in the struggle. This might come off controversial, but there's two groups of people that understand America. There's those that come from the mainstream Protestant white communities that come from a place of strength, and that they this country's theirs. And then there's the African American community that has been oppressed since the founding of the nation. And these two groups, they're the ones that understand the game. So we have to reach out to our elders like yourself to also understand the game and understand, where do we fit in? We're new to this country, and we may not know exactly what's always going on, or what the best way to approach certain topics. The next question is going to be for Brother Dawud, Imam Elahi, and Baqir. Please feel free to chime in. What is the responsibility of non-Black immigrant communities in the wake of the George Floyd murder? And I also want to couple it with a question that was asked by Akil Fahid on Facebook. Why is it that Bilal and only Bilal is mentioned when speaking of racism amongst Muslims? Part of the deep racism amongst Muslims is lack of acknowledgement of dark complexions and African ancestry. And I think that is a problem within the immigrant Muslim community. So those two questions: what is our responsibility as immigrants in the wake of the George Floyd murder? And why is it that it seems like Bilal is the one who's always mentioned in these circumstances? And that's for everybody. Please feel free to chime in. We'll start with Imam Elahi, and then Brother Dawud, and then Baqir.
Yes, first of all, Brother Dawud pointed about the definition of ma'ruf and munkar. Our discussion tonight and the national conversation at this time is really about ma'ruf and munkar. That, like, racism is a very obvious case of munkarat. Like, injustice is the worst munkar. Oppression is the most munkar. And we are responsible to stand against all these munkarat, the things that are sinful, forbidden, and against the teachings of actually all the faith. African American, first of all, many of them are Muslims, like 25%, if I'm not mistaken, but 20% of Muslim community in the United States are African American or people of color. And they are actually suffer twice. One time because they are people of color, and then because they are Muslim. So actually they go through injustice more than any other Muslims. And obviously our responsibility is that whether they are Muslims or non-Muslim, we are talking about justice and injustice. In Islam, when you see an act of injustice, you have to stand for it. It doesn't matter if justice hurts you. The Quran says, وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ وَالْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Doesn't matter. If justice hurts you, or if justice helps your enemies. Regardless, you have to stand for justice. And so when we are talking about African American, we are talking about the huge amount of injustice and oppression in the last 400 years and abuse against people who have a great contribution, have had great contribution in construction of this country. So they suffered, they sacrificed, they went through all the like slavery and torture and deprivation of their identity, their dignity, their human rights. So for many reasons, they are the one who must be rewarded and be honored, and their sacrifice should be celebrated. But when we see that somebody like George Floyd, he dies the way that he doesn't deserve that, nobody deserves to die like that. Even now that I'm talking, I don't know really what happened. They are saying that he had a bill of $20, that it was fake, and maybe somebody else gave him this bill. Like I could receive it from somebody else and give it to that store. And it's amazing, a country that, how many times we heard that, even Trump said it, that we spend $7 trillion in wars in the Middle East. Nobody was taken to jail or was killed because of $7 trillion of wasting money. And now we are so worried about $20. Of course, law is law, whether small or big. I'm not questioning that, but I'm saying that our duty, our responsibility is to stand for justice. And we know in these cases that these brothers were killed, murdered. It was unjust, and it is a responsibility. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, من سمع رجلا ينادي على المسلم فلم يجبه فليس بمسلم. It's amazing. The Prophet says, ليس بمسلم. That if you hear that somebody is asking for help and you know that this person is suffering under oppression and injustice, and you stay silent, then you are not a Muslim. ليس بمسلم. That's a big statement, that whether we choose to be a Muslim, and that is to stand against racism, of course, in a peaceful way. We are against violence, whether it's done by the police or whether done by the protesters. And we know that there are some people who are looking for violence, are looking for civil war in this country, and they may promote this. So those who participate in demonstrations must be very careful that, yes, we are against racism, but at the same time, we are against violence, we are against looting, we are against burning the building. And if few people, for whatever reason that we don't know them, the people who participate in this peaceful protest must be careful to defend their movement from the things that may damage and destroy and ruin their revolution against racism.
Thank you, Maulana. Brother Dawud, same question. What is expected from non-Black immigrant communities in the wake of the George Floyd murder? What should we do? Who should we reach out to? Because I saw a post you said to reach out to people who have been in this and that know what's going on. So who should we reach out to? What is our responsibility as non-Black immigrant communities? And please go ahead.
Well, I think number one that it is, and this is an adab point. It's an adab point, and I can even say this is a sign of emotional intelligence. So if you as a Muslim are really concerned about Black life here in America, then, and you want to know what to do, it would be wise to talk with and engage your fellow brothers and sisters in faith who are Black, rather than jump over us to try to work with Black Lives Matter or some other secular organization. It makes more sense. It's better adab. And like, so it doesn't even make sense that you would work to establish a relationship with Black people who aren't Muslims to skip over your own Muslim brothers and sisters who read the same Quran as you, who make who make 5 daily prayers.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Ramadan.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Allahumma salli Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sallam. And all of these things. So that's one point. The other point I would say is that Dr. Sherman Abdul Hakim Jackson, who lived here for quite a long time, he said that hard work is hard work, right? So outward work seems hard, but the hardest work is hard work. So the first place that we start in having these conversations and try to do Islah is in our own family, in our own communities, right? So it doesn't really make sense if you're talking about marching for respect for Black people, and then people right in your own household are calling Black people Abid, right? Or looking down at Black people. That doesn't make sense, right? And then the other thing I'll mention is very briefly about what Brother Akil Fahad said in regards to Bilal al-Habashi being mentioned, and how sometimes people maybe, and I know Sheikh Elahi knows many other stories in other people relaying in Islamic history and these types of issues. But I want to address something very quickly, and it's a little touchy, right? But why is it that in our discourse we don't mention that the mother of Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam was from Africa and that he had dark skin? Or why we don't mention that the mother of Imam Muhammad al-Jawad alayhi salam was African and he had dark skin, that these imams walked around looking darker than me or darker than me, in fact, right? So how come we don't talk about that? And then why is it that in Dearborn to this day, and in some places, when they have pictures that depict the 12 imams, and no disrespect to Sheikh Elahi, he's from Iran, but they have the 12 imams looking like all looking like Persians. They didn't look that way, right? Imam Musa al-Kadhim didn't look that way. Imam Ali al-Rida didn't look that way. Imam Muhammad Jawad didn't look that way, right? So why don't we talk about how they actually looked? Maybe if people in the Shia community had a clearer picture about the African connection to the imams and how they looked, if they knew their immaculate imams, if they walked through Detroit today or Minneapolis, they could be a target of police brutality, then maybe they'd view this issue differently. I'm sorry if I overstep my bounds, but I have to say this because we have to do a better job about talking about Islamic history, Sahaba, but Ahlul Bayt too. If we talk about Ahlul Bayt is immaculate, let's really talk about them real. Let's talk about who their mothers are. Let's be real, okay?
Thank you so much, Maulana. You hit the nail on the head on several points. It's just fascinating. We should reach out to the Black Muslim community before we reach out to the other organizations. We're trying to build all these bridges by skipping over the Black mosques and the Black Muslims, and I think that's fascinating.
I agree with Imam Dawud regarding photo. It's the same problem with Jesus and Mary, right? I mean, all the photos in the West that we have from Jesus and Mary looks like they are European, and their eyes, their skin, and why Jesus was not like a white or Mary. I mean, that's the same thing. Maybe because all the pictures made in Iran and is kind of a culture influences the art. Maybe that is something that. But your point is absolutely correct.
I think Baqir, this question is for you, and then I'll have 2 more questions, and then we will end the night. Baqir, please shed some light on what can and is being done with regards to this from a public policy perspective. if you know of any, or what can be done and how we can get started with some of the points that Brother Dawud Walid mentioned. I think it's extremely important that we reach out to Black Muslims who are, indigenous in a way, that they're descendants of slavery and oppression, and they understand the system. So what can we do from a public policy perspective to discuss this issue and create real bridges with people who have our ideals and our morality?
So first and foremost, we need to engage our elected officials. We need to know our representatives and our senators and our council people in our localities. We need to know their phone numbers, their emails. That's very important, first and foremost. For like Islamic House of Wisdom and Dearborn Heights around the area, and Dearborn, Detroit, our representatives are Representative Rashida Tlaib and Representative Debbie Dingle, right? Our senators are Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters. How many times have we called them? How many times have we emailed them and asked them to support a bill or to not support a bill, right? So first thing I would request from everybody listening right now, grab your phones and save their phone numbers in your phone. It's as easy as the switchboard. There's a switchboard for the Senate and there's a switchboard for the House. Phone numbers are 202-334-3121 for the Senate, 202-224-3121 for the House of Representatives. So one is 334, one is 224. Sorry, 334 and 224. I'll write it down for everybody in the chat, right? Save these phone numbers. You can call them 24 hours a day, and you can ask for Debbie Dingle and they'll get her on the phone. You can ask for Rashida Tlaib and they'll get her on the phone or the voicemail. Same with Debbie Stabenow, same with Gary Peters. That's the first thing, engage them. Second thing is follow the advice of the African-American Muslim community. Ask them, what bills should we support? What bills should we not support? They are very knowledgeable of the laws that are coming through and what requires our support. You call your congressman or woman, your senators, you let them know to vote for this bill, right? The more calls that they get, the more action that they will take. They follow our lead.
Baqir, you hit an important point is before, it's so important, like you said, to reach out to them first and see what they want too, especially the African-American Muslims. So I think that that's something that we should highlight in this, that's an extremely important point that you brought up.
Yeah, so let me also add, like I'm over here in Washington, D.C. We're advocating for Muslim Americans, right? Our voice is not heard for the most part because our people do not vote. Our people do not engage with the House of Representatives, with the Senates. Even so, Dearborn might engage a bit more on average than other communities, but we're still lacking. We can make a humongous difference if we all engage and exercise our rights as American citizens and make these calls. Furthermore, one of the most influential advocate over here in Washington, D.C. is an African-American and Shi'ite brother named Jihad Saleh, right? You guys should look him up on Facebook, look him up on Twitter, follow him, and he will guide you to many African-American Shi'ite imams around the United States, whether in Philadelphia and Chicago and Detroit. We need to engage with these communities so we know how to vote for them to help them out. Second of all, on a policy level, right? At MPAC, we're working on a human security campaign, humansecuritynow.org. Human security is sort of the intersection between national security and human rights, right? It means ending inequities in our world, inequities in our food, in our housing, in our criminal justice system, and our approach to our nation. Because we believe that when people are safe, the nation is safe. When the population is secure, then the nation is secure, right? So do look up the campaign, sign on to the letters, follow the bills that they do announce. As of right now, a few solutions are being proposed by various advocates around the nation regarding police reform. They're calling for independent prosecutors to prosecute these police, right? What's happening is these police have a track record of committing these crimes and these murders, but the prosecutors are their buddies that they work with every single day, and they're not prosecuting them correctly. They give them a pass. That's the first thing, right? where there's also calls to end police immunity. The police union is the only union in the United States. Don't quote me for that, but I don't know any other union in the United States where you will not get fired for the crimes that you commit. Right? They're invisible. Right? So if you end police immunity, if there's legislation that passes that does not allow for immunity, then they will not be committing these crimes, and the ones that do will be thrown in jail very quickly. Right? There are also calls to dismantle the local police systems. That's, I believe, should be at a local level. You decide with your own community, is your police system protecting you or not? Is your police force representative of your community and from your city, or are they coming from suburbs and hours away to watch over you? Minnesota is going through that call right now, but I do believe it's a local issue where every single area should talk about it. And if they want to dismantle the police and defund their police and start a local group watch, then that's another decision as well. So that's the policy update right there.
Ahsan, thank you. That's a wonderful policy update. It's important to not pretend that it's a one-size-fits-all solution as well. So I think it's nice that you touched up on that each community should study their situation and act accordingly. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to wrap up. Brother Dawud, if you're... oh, you're there. Brother Dawud? What is some vocabulary? I think words are very important. Of course, as a psychiatrist, I think words are important. What is some vocabulary we can promote to support the items we've discussed above? Because a lot of the vocabulary seems to be dominated by two extremes. The woke activism and those who are pretty racist. What kind of vocabulary can we promote to support our cause as Muslim Americans and to support your cause as a Black Muslim American? I know you wrote a wonderful book called Sacred Activism, which I recommend everybody read. But if you could shed some light on some vocabulary that we can use that's from our tradition to kind of bring back the narrative to us, to take hold of the narrative, instead of just abiding by the narrative being pushed by any group.
I'm not sure about me giving some specific words, more so as frames, and us being more careful about repeating the preset frames that other people have given us with different language, and just investigating that really carefully. And then also I'd like to make one correction on how I've heard this issue talked about, which Sheikh Elahi touched upon, but I want to be a little more direct. So there's actually a very good book that came out. It's a small book. It's called Don't Think of an Elephant. And I suggest everyone reads that book. And if not, just read the preface. And that's enough. It's called Don't Think of an Elephant, written by George Lakoff. And he talks about the power of frames when people have preset frames. And once you get in a frame, in a cognitive frame, and someone paints something a certain way, then it traps you in that frame. So even if you want to talk about an issue, you're starting from a place of disadvantage from the person who set the frame to begin with, right? So it's called Don't Think of an Elephant because he starts off saying that if you closed your eyes and if someone told you don't think about an elephant, and then they say, don't think about an elephant in India, don't think about an elephant in Africa, don't think about a gray elephant, don't think about a baby elephant, don't think about Hannibal riding an elephant. And then you open your eyes, and then he says, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? What are you thinking about? You're going to say elephant, because that's all you heard over and over and over again, right? Like Muslims have been painted so much as being terrorists. So if we say Muslims aren't terrorists or Muslims against terrorism, we're actually repeating the frame. We need to talk about who we are instead of who we're not in the frame that we've been trapped in. This is like, this is something that is like from, this is actually something that's kind of like a mantiqi, so to speak, right? Related to logic. So I'll give you one example of like framework, right? So like the LGBTQ community, they did a masterful job at this when they said marriage equality, right? It went from same-sex marriage to marriage equality. So they put the word in equality. So if you're against that, then they framed it that you're against equality. And everyone, if they're for justice, they're supposed to be for equality, right? So they framed you in a certain way. So we have to be very careful about the language we say. So for instance, one bad frame that's bad for the Muslim community internally as well as externally is some things I've seen in press releases, and some people have said the Muslim community stands in solidarity with the Black community, or the Muslim community stands in solidarity with the African American community. There's a problematic framework for two reasons. One, the American Muslim community is 30 to up to 33% Black, right? So by saying the Muslim community stands with the Black community, and almost a third of the Muslim community is Black, it's like it implies that Muslims who are Black aren't really fully Muslim in comparison to the Arab, to the South Asian, to Persian, to the Turk. It's a problematic framework, right, to work from. Muslims should be saying that when we stand with the Black community, we are standing with ourselves. Why? Because about 1 out of every 4 or 1 out of every 3 Muslims in America is Black. We stand with ourselves, right? And then 2, this is a messaging point when we talk about this to the broader community and even in our advocacy, because it gives us more weight in how we advocate for the issue, because we're not advocating for an issue outside of us. Like, we have authority when we speak upon the issue, especially if we have Black leaders who are Muslims who are help giving the talking points and taking the lead. So we have to be more sophisticated in our language. One, if we want them have a more inclusive Muslim community, or more justice in the Muslim community. But 2, even for our own political advocacy and empowerment as Muslims, in a broader sense, we have to use the right language, the right words. Words matter, right? And that's the point that I try to drive home, and I touch on and towards sacred activism. And of course, you're a psychiatrist, so you know these frames and cognitive frameworks are extremely important, right? And the enemies of our community, they've mastered these frameworks, right? They say Israeli Defense Force, right? This is a heck of a frame, because who should be against self-defense? But now if you say occupational force instead of defense force, then that's different, right? Because they are an occupational force. So I don't say IDF. I say it's the occupational force, right? So these are just some examples that I like.
I think those are extremely important examples. Words do matter, and we don't want to stick ourselves into a narrative, whether it's left wing or right wing, that gets us stuck within their words, right? We need to use our tradition and use our own words in a way to bring this justice and unity, because sacred justice is different than nihilistic justice. So we have to keep that in mind as well. So thank you for that, brother. I'm going to give everyone about 3 minutes for closing comment. We'll start with Baqir, go to Sheikh Elahi, and then to Dawud, and then we will close it off with a Fatiha for all those who have been lost to oppression and hatred. Baqir, unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I do urge all to take this issue very seriously and to stand with our Black American sisters and brothers as strong allies. Many of us would not be here if it wasn't for the civil rights movement that happened in 1964 and 1965. It was the African Americans that pushed for the National Immigration Act to pass in 1964 and 1965 alongside the Civil Rights Act. I've even read some places where Martin Luther King Jr. forced or put tremendous pressure on President Johnson to sign that bill. Before that bill, there was quotas for people of color to come to the United States. Very strict colors. If you were brown, you were not welcome here like at all. You'd come here as a worker and you'd have to leave if you were to come here at all, right? So that was the bill that opened up the immigration for our families to come here as refugees, to come here as immigrants, and to plant our roots here and to feed our families from this land, right? So they stood for us. While they're fighting for their rights, they fought for us. So let's fight for them as minorities, right? Let's take this issue very seriously. Let's do all that we can do on a policy matter and a civil manner, any manner possible. Whatever their leaders tell us to do, we listen to them. We should be able to do, whether it's supporting policy, whether it's heading to the streets for protests or anything else, right? So I do urge that we as Arab Americans and Muslim Americans take this issue very seriously. And thanks a lot for hosting this.
Thank you, Baqir. Maulana?
Yeah, it's a good point that Brother Dean said. Engagement with Congress people matters a lot, because when we talk about change and reform in police department or in criminal justice system, that's the Congress, a place of changing rules and regulations. And so we need those people that be in contact with our representatives. That's very important to continue, and we need more engagement from our community, no doubt about that. We have shortcoming on this. Sometimes we have too much expectation, and we want everybody comes and do our homework, and we just sit down there and criticize if there was one mistake by somebody. And so we need to really do like the same verse that you mentioned. We have to start this change and this reformation from ourselves. And the second thing is that interfaith matters a lot. I mean, and this is why at the House of Wisdom, really, that's part of our priorities. We do everything else too. I mean, look at the food service. We had it in Ramadan every day. Today, we had almost 2,000 people that from 12 o'clock till 4 o'clock, non-stop lines of distribution of, and alhamdulillah, with the generous people and companies and everyone, we not only short, but we even have it now. We said it's not even done. But our most important thing that even the Salat and Siyam and all these community services, interfaith is part of our mission. And this situation showed us. I mean, look at the position of this Reverend Sharpton. I think that he spoke in the funeral of George Frieden, that it was amazing. Last night, Sean Hannity was doing bombardment against this Reverend Sharpton, that he criticized Trump by just taking photo with the Bible. He said, just at least open the Bible and read the Bible and see what Bible says, instead of just taking the photo and being proud of the picture of the Bible, like we do in Saudi. They are proud of picture of the Quran. That is not really so. And also the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., from Catholic, other denomination. My goodness, I mean, the things that they said courageously is very inspiring, that it shows that there are so much commonality between religious leaders in Muslim community, Christian community, even in Jewish community. So we should take interfaith very seriously. And some of the slogans that in this protest, like I can breathe, this is a very serious matter. I can breathe. How can we apply to those Palestinians, 75 years they cannot breathe from the Nakba till now. People in Yemen, they cannot breathe. The Khashoggi in Saudi embassy, I cannot breathe. I mean, people, victims of terrorism in Syria, in Iraq, in Africa, in Asia, that they cannot breathe. So it's very important. Yesterday, one of the slogans in Detroit was that, what do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. I mean, this kind of thing that we learn from what is going on these days, and keep this conversation constant. We cannot just tonight finish with this program and relax that, oh, I did my duty and khalas, you know, but I did it. No. Dialogue, interfaith, engagement, what CARE is doing, what Dawud is doing, legal services, all of these things, other community activists. I think we need to continue this outreach. This is Quran keeps saying, ta'alaw, 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 lita'arafu, 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 that let's come and get together and know one another. Wa ta'awanu, then cooperation, and fastabagu bil khairat, you know, a race and competition for compassion, for love, for justice. So inshallah, we continue this interaction, but we need from our community more support. We really feel that are heartbroken that, you know, people talk about it sometimes, but when you ask for help, okay, come, become part of the board, be a decision maker in this center, House of Wisdom, Mother Masajid, be part of it, be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. Let us be part of the solution and help one another, support one another for the sake of interest and image of the community and country and humanity, inshallah.
Thank you. And I think we need nuance from our ulama as well to make sure that we understand what justice means Islamically, because sometimes words can mean different things depending on the groups that we're around. So we also have to be very aware, and I think the best way to get awareness is to talk to people like Dawud, Walid as well, to understand what do they mean by justice in some of these instances. And how do we make the justice true Islamic justice in the sense where it stems from a sacred aspect or background. Brother Dawud, please, just the closing remarks, and then we will end for the night.
Almighty God says in the Quran, speaking to the people of the book, but it's also instructive for us. Do people call others and join upon others righteousness and justice, but they forget it for themselves? Yet they recite the book. Do you not have intelligence? Don't you have any sense? So I would say that for Muslims in general, we complain and we talk about Islamophobia, anti-Muslim bigotry, xenophobia, and these sort of things. But for us to be a community of istiqama, we're going to have integrity, that we really have to clean up our act. And we really need to check ourselves to make sure that we aren't guilty in a way, even if it's on a smaller level, even if it's on a micro level, but we aren't guilty in some ways of doing what we complain about Trump supporters and other people like this doing to us. So I think that we have to be very reflective. And you don't have to be an alim to do this, or an activist. These conversations start at our dinner tables, in our homes. It starts over eating famous hamburger, right? You go to famous, or what's the other one that's good? Tasty. It starts over a tasty burger or some hummus or kubade with your own family, right? And you're sitting, you talk about these things and what's going on, and for us to make sure that we, as Sheikh Elahi said, that we're not part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution, that we're not part of the problem. So that's my closing advice.
Thank you, Maulana, so much. I want to end with a few words that this is difficult times for people's emotions. Please try to stay reasonable. Try to learn from those who have been there before us. And make sure we also as Muslims capture the narrative using our terminology and our akhlaq and our deen, not just jump on any bandwagon, empty slogans, but actually really feel what we're doing. There's activism, and then there's nihilistic activism. Nihilistic activism has no goals. It just, wherever there's a mob, they'll go and they'll do what they got to do. That's nihilistic activism, and that's a real activism. This was written by Nietzsche, Marx, many others. Nihilistic activism. We want sacred activism. We want to know what the goals are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, not just do. There's no such thing as action without feeling and thinking. So we must be very careful and cognizant of these things. We must pray for our African American, Black American, and Muslim Americans who are struggling during this time. And we have to remember that we live in a country that has potential, but to get to that potential, we really need to bring our values to the forefront. And it has to be our real values, our true values, our Islamic values, not just whatever we hear or whatever hashtag is around. And I say that sincerely, I really do. And I generally don't watch violent videos that occur in the real world. I'll watch violent movies, but I don't watch violent videos because I don't want to be desensitized to it. But when I watched George Floyd's, that was one of the first times I've actually seen someone die on a camera. I don't watch it. People send me stuff and I don't watch it because I don't want to be desensitized to it. And I think that was a reason why it affected me so much, is because I don't watch it all the time. And I realized that we have to have a real goal and a real objective, and we have to do it correctly. So while I am optimistic, I'm also cautiously optimistic. I don't want the Muslims to lose themselves or lose their narrative in the name of nihilistic activism. We need to be sincere in our activism and sincere in what we're doing, and do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just attach ourselves to whatever is popular, but whatever is necessary. And this is necessary. Black people deserve much better. And we need to seek guidance from them. And with that said, I want to read a quote by Frederick Douglass. "The soul that is within me, no man can degrade. The soul that is within me, no man can degrade." Activism starts on the inside. Purify yourselves. All of us, myself included. My activism, I may not be marching in the streets, but I have a clinic that I see people in. So that's where my activism comes in. My family, we don't say the A word, the ABED word. That's where it starts. It starts in the household. It starts with the family. Let's build our families. Let's build our communities, and let's support one another and support the Black community with sincerity and with heart. With that said, let's read Surah Al-Fatiha on the souls of all those who are oppressed, and especially our Black American Muslims and Black Americans in general, and on the soul of one of the great activists that we all know but seldom understand, Malcolm X. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Thank you, everyone. This was a sincere honor. One of the highest honors I've had on being a panel with Brother Dawud Walid and Imam Elahi and Baqir. But especially being on a panel with Brother Dawud Walid, it means a lot to me. I've been on panels on universities and things, and this is much more rewarding for me on a personal level, emotional level, and a spiritual level. With that said, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, and have a good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.